Welcome to today's deep dive. We're genuinely thrilled you're spending this time with us today because
Oh,
if you've been feeling entirely overwhelmed lately by just the constant heavy barrage of doom and gloom news about the environment, I really want you to take a deep breath.
yeah, we've all been there.
Right. Today we are taking a massive detour from that narrative.
We really are. We're looking at a fundamentally different perspective today, because instead of focusing solely on the apocalyptic dread that so often paralyzes us.
It totally paralyzes us.
Right, and let's be honest, makes us want to just close our laptops and hide under a blanket.
Exactly.
Instead of that, we are looking at the mechanics of possibility. We're looking at actual transformation.
And our source material for this deep dive it's this beautifully curated stack of excerpts, interviews, and frameworks drawn from marine biologist and policy expert Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson's book.
Yes.
It's titled, What If We Get It Right? Visions of Climate Futures. And the mission for our time together today is highly specific. We are going to explore a powerful conceptual tool that Dr. Johnson outlines called the Climate Action Venn Diagram.
The Venn diagram, it's so good.
It is. It's designed specifically to help you bypass that generic go green advice we hear all the time and instead help you find your highly specific individual climate purpose.
Because Johnson is essentially asking a rather radical question to set the planetary stage for us here. She asks, and this is the quote, what if we act as if we love the future?
Wow, what if we act as if we love the future?
It's a complete departure from the typical climate narrative, isn't it? It asks us to stop procrastinating out of fear and start conjuring a flourishing future that is actually worth the immense effort it's going to take from all of us.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand why this Venn diagram is so revolutionary, we first have to look at the status quo.
Right.
Think about what the climate movement and the media usually tell you to do. It's always the exact same list.
Vote, protest, donate.
Spread the word, lower your individual carbon footprint. And while doing those things is necessary, I have to confess something.
What's that?
I am terrible at being the perfect environmentalist. Half the time I forget my reusable canvas bags at the grocery store, and then I just feel incredibly guilty about it for the rest of the day. But that generic advice, it leaves massive amounts of human potential completely untapped.
Because it doesn't ask you to bring your specific talents to the table.
Exactly. It just asks you to follow a checklist.
And the polling data cited in our sources perfectly illustrates why that checklist approach is totally failing.
Lay the numbers on us.
So currently, 70% of Americans are genuinely concerned that climate change will harm plants, animals, and future generations.
70%, that's a huge majority.
It is. But here is the massive disconnect. 65% of people rarely or never talk about the topic with their friends and families.
Wait, really? 65%?
Yeah. We are deeply worried, but we are entirely silent.
That is a staggering gap between how we feel and how we act.
And furthermore, the data shows that 11% of Americans, which translates to 37 million people, are willing to become actively engaged but haven't taken any action yet.
37 million.
That is 37 million people waiting on the sidelines. The conventional go green advice simply isn't activating them because it doesn't give them a specific, meaningful role.
37 million people. That is a reservoir of potential energy just waiting to be unleashed. And that brings us to the core philosophy Johnson presents, echoing a quote from the activist Angela Davis included in the text.
Oh, this is a great quote.
Quote, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world. And you have to do it all the time."
Moving from passive concern to an active daily practice of possibility is the entire paradigm shift here. And that brings us right to the framework itself, the tool to help those 37 million people, and perhaps you, listening right now, figure out exactly how to get off the sidelines.
Let's get into this climate action Venn diagram. Now, I can almost hear some of our listeners thinking, a Venn diagram? Really? The ice caps are melting, the forests are burning, and we're going to sit down and do arts and crafts.
Right, it sounds a little simplistic at first glance.
It does. But as we'll see, this isn't just a feel-good exercise. You can think of it as a simplified, climate-focused version of Ikigai.
It's a Japanese concept.
Right, the Japanese concept of finding one's life purpose. It consists of 3 overlapping circles. Let's start by breaking down the first circle. What are you good at?
This first circle is where you take a rigorous inventory of your specific superpower.
Superpowers.
Yes. It requires looking at your professional expertise, your technical skills, the resources you control, and your social or professional networks. The fundamental assumption here is that absolutely everyone has something unique to offer.
Everyone.
Everyone. It doesn't matter if you are an accountant, an artist, a nurse, a parent, or a cheer conductor. You have a superpower that goes far beyond just remembering to recycle your cardboard.
So, if circle 1 is about identifying the tools in your toolbox, what is the second circle?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we move to the second circle. What work needs doing?
Okay.
This focuses heavily on systemic changes and scalable solutions for climate and justice. It's about looking out at the world, finding the gnarly challenges, as Johnson puts it, and seeing where there are actual gaps that need filling in your community or industry.
I imagine that work isn't always glamorous or high profile, right?
Not at all. There is a fantastic interview in the book with Jade Begay, a policy director and indigenous rights advocate.
Mm-hmm.
When asked about the least sexy thing we need to do to get to this future vision, her answer was brilliantly specific. She said, we need to engage in public hearings and federal comment periods.
Wait, break that down for me. For the listeners who aren't policy wonks, what actually happens in a comment period, and why does it matter more than, say, going to a protest?
So whenever a federal agency proposes a new rule or an infrastructure project, like a new pipeline or a zoning change, they are legally required to open a window, usually 30 to 60 days, for public comment.
Okay, so the public gets to weigh in.
Exactly. And agencies are legally obligated to review and address substantive comments before finalizing their plans.
Substantive being the key word there.
Yes. Begay points out that writing a detailed, evidence-based comment on a boring government portal can actually force an agency to alter or abandon a harmful project.
Wow.
It is highly technical, totally unsexy work, but it is a direct lever of power. It is precisely the kind of systemic gap that needs filling.
Which perfectly sets up the third circle, because if you are going to be reading dense federal policy documents on a Tuesday night, you need circle 3 to survive.
You really do.
The third circle asks, what brings you joy? Or, if joy feels too light a word for such a heavy topic, what brings you deep satisfaction? What actually energizes you?
Emphasizing joy is critical here because climate work takes decades. If you don't choose actions that energize and enliven you, you will inevitably burn out. Long-term engagement requires sustainable internal energy. Joy is the ultimate renewable energy source.
I love that. Joy is a renewable energy. Environmental journalist Judith D. Schwartz provides such a tangible example of this in the text.
She does.
She talks about how she's currently working on enhancing the habitat for at-risk native pollinators right where she lives.
Right.
And she describes the intensely sensory, infectious joy of anticipating the increase in insect diversity. She talks about playing with beautiful plants, seeing the vibrant colors emerge in her yard, and physically getting her hands into the soil.
Which is incredibly grounding.
Literally and figuratively. That tangible joy prevents the burnout that comes from just reading terrifying climate reports all day. It keeps her curious.
So we have our three circles. What are you good at, what work needs doing, and what brings you joy? The goal is to find the sweet spot where all three overlap.
The sweet spot.
Operating at the intersection of these three circles creates significantly more progress than if everyone blindly follows a standardized list of green behaviors that don't utilize their actual skills.
Let's make this super concrete by looking at Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson's own Venn diagram overlap.
Let's do it.
So for her first circle, her skills, she is a trained marine biologist and a self-described policy nerd.
Okay.
For the second circle, what Tennis Meat needs doing, she recognized that coastal cities were incredibly vulnerable to sea level rise and climate injustice. And she noticed that ocean conservation was largely missing from the conversation entirely.
Which is a massive gap.
Huge gap. And for her joy, her identity, she is a Brooklyn native who deeply loves the ocean.
And that specific intersection produced profound real-world results.
She really did.
It led her to co-found Urban Ocean Lab, which is a policy think tank dedicated to the future of coastal cities. It also led her to co-create the Blue New Deal plan.
The Blue New Deal.
Yes. For those who might not be familiar with it, the Blue New Deal is a comprehensive policy framework designed to ensure that ocean conservation, coastal community protection, and sustainable shipping are explicitly written into national climate legislation.
So she didn't just tell people to eat less meat?
No. She used her exact policy and marine science skills to draft national legislation. That is the power of the sweet spot.
But what if my skills are entirely corporate? What if my superpower is something like product design or supply chain management? How does that possibly fit into a climate action diagram? Finding your sweet spot doesn't mean you have to quit your job to go start a marine biology nonprofit, does it?
No, not at all. What's fascinating here is you are often most powerful right where you are within your existing roles and
It's
networks.
inside the system.
Exactly.
Hmm.
The book features an interview with Paola Antonelli, a senior curator of architecture and design, that perfectly answers your question. She illustrates how something as simple as the physical design of an object fundamentally changes citizen behavior.
I would love to hear how design moves the needle on this.
So she compares the design of recycling infrastructure in different locations. She notes that in New York, the setup is often quite disastrous.
As a New Yorker, I can confirm.
Right. Not nearly enough bins, poor placement, and a total lack of clarity on what goes where. It makes the citizen feel like their effort doesn't even matter.
Yeah, you just toss it in and hope for the best.
But she points out that in Germany or Italy, the infrastructure is visibly designed to communicate civic responsibility. She mentions that in her family's home in Italy, there are 5 distinct, beautifully designed bins.
5.
5. Paper, plastic, glass, food waste, and landfill.
I can see how that changes the psychology of throwing something away.
Exactly the point. The result of that specific design interface is that citizens start pushing back on packaging at the supermarket because they are hyper-aware of what they are bringing into their homes and having to sort.
Because it's a pain to sort 5 different ways if the packaging is excessive.
Yes. Design lives in policies and interfaces, not just objects. So if your corporate superpower is design, deploying it to address how your company packages its products or how your city manages waste is an incredibly potent way to work in that sweet spot without ever leaving your profession. We need change at every sector, which means we need insiders pushing for it.
It totally shifts the perspective from feeling powerless to realizing you have real insider leverage. So we've mapped out the individual application. But the ultimate goal of the Venn diagram isn't just to make you individually feel better about your career. It's about moving from an obsession with the individual I and our personal carbon footprints to the collective we.
You can't do this in a vacuum. Fixing a broken system takes a massive team, which means once you figure out your personal superpower, you have to go find your people.
Find your people.
The book emphasizes moving toward collective action because the problems we face are structural.
Colette Pichon-Battle, a climate justice leader featured in the sources, offers a really beautiful way to visualize this. She talks about the power of what she calls formations.
Formations.
Yeah. When she organizes people, she says it isn't just about building rigid top-down coalitions. She likens these formations to a flock of birds. A murmuration.
It's a striking image. Hundreds of birds moving in perfect synchronization without a single leader dictating the flight path.
People coming together, agreeing to move together as a self-determined unit to practice democracy and make decisions collectively. It's fluid, it's dynamic, but it's entirely unified in its direction. And to make these murmurations work in the real world, we are going to need some highly unlikely alliances.
We are. The sources provide a very compelling look at what those alliances look like in practice, specifically through the story of Brent Smith. He's a former commercial fisherman who became an ocean farmer.
Okay.
He describes a promise of a new politics taking shape around tangible, physical climate solutions. In his work growing seaweed and setting anchors out on the water, he describes seeing Trump voters and indigenous groups working side by side.
Wow. That is certainly not an alliance you see very often on the evening news.
No, it's not. He specifically mentions the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers Cooperative. To give some context, this is a multi-generational collective of indigenous women leveraging their traditional ecological knowledge to grow kelp.
And kelp purifies the water, right?
Yes, it naturally purifies the water and captures carbon. Smith's account presents this as a fascinating development where people who might never align politically online or in traditional voting spaces find common ground.
They find it on the water.
Exactly. They build actual solidarity through the physical, granular work of restoring the environment and building a local economy out on the boats. It underscores the reality that overhauling our systems will literally require everyone, bypassing our usual political tribalism.
If we are building these incredibly diverse murmurations, bringing together corporate designers, policy wonks, indigenous collectives, and commercial fishermen, how do we make sure we are actually heading in the right direction? What is our compass in all of this?
The compass requires a profound cultural shift. We have to learn how to listen to the earth again.
Listen to the earth. Leah Penniman, a farmer and organizer featured in the book, shares an incredible anecdote about her hero, Dr. George Washington Carver, that speaks directly to this.
I love this story.
Most of us know him from grade school history for his agricultural inventions with peanuts and sweet potatoes. But Penniman highlights his deeply spiritual relationship with the forest. Every morning, in the dark before dawn, he would go into the woods just to listen to what the trees, the flowers, and the soil had to say.
Just listening.
Just listening. When people asked how he came up with his brilliant scientific ideas, he said nature was like unlimited broadcasting stations, and he viewed it as God's radio. He just tuned in.
Kahneman argues, referencing environmental expert Audrey Peterman, that right now modern society is playing a dangerous game of telephone with the Earth.
A game of telephone.
Think about it. Only a very small handful of people actually hear what the Earth has to say. They tell someone else, who tells someone else, and thousands of people later, the message of what we are supposed to be doing is completely scrambled.
The cultural shift we need is for all of us to become literate in the language of the Earth again. Whether it's reading the ice cores, understanding the shifts in birdsong, or knowing the health of the soil in our own backyards, we have to tune our radios back to that primary source so our murmurations know where to fly.
And once we are listening, and once we've found our sweet spot in the Venn diagram, we have to get to work.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Johnson reveals what she believes to be the sexiest word in the English language.
The sexiest word.
Are you ready for it? Implementation.
It's a highly pragmatic choice for this context.
It is the only word that matters right now. Because as the book demonstrates over and over, we already have most of the solutions we need.
We do.
The renewable technologies, the regenerative agricultural practices, the policy blueprints like the Blue New Deal, they already exist. The primary issue is no longer discovery. The issue is execution. We just need to build the strongest possible teams to implement them.
And building those teams requires a total rethinking of how we view leadership. The sources explore the concept of being leaderful.
Leaderful.
Yes. Historically, social movements can be quite fragile if they're helmed by just one or two prominent, charismatic leaders.
Because if that leader falters, the movement collapses.
Precisely. What is needed now is a movement that is leaderful, meaning we need millions of people leading from within their specific circles of influence.
Being a leader in this context absolutely does not mean you have to be a hero or a massive social media influencer. As Johnson notes, you might not be an Instagram model, but you have immense soft power.
Yes.
You have power in how you spend your time, where you invest your money, and how you roll up your sleeves within your local community. You just need to find a way to be uniquely useful.
We should also emphasize that this entire process is a dynamic journey. Your personal Venn diagram is not carved in stone.
It changes over time as you learn new skills, as you change careers, or as the needs of the world evolve. You can even have multiple diagrams running at the same time for different areas of your life.
Right.
Johnson calls this a portfolio approach to your climate action. You diversify your impact. The key is simply to keep moving toward the gaps that only you can fill.
Synthesizing all of this, what we are looking at is a fundamental reframing of our relationship with the climate crisis.
Totally.
Addressing this monumental challenge doesn't just mean giving things up, shrinking away, or living in a state of perpetual anxiety. It means actively seeking the exact intersection of your skills, the world's needs, and your joy.
It's moving from apocalyptic procrastination, which is still the thief of time, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. noted about the fierce urgency of now, to a state of joyous, inspired urgency. We are entering the future with moral clarity, asking not just how to survive the coming decades, but how to actively conjure a flourishing world.
This raises an important question for everyone listening. When you look at the sheer scale of the crisis, it is incredibly easy to feel like your individual actions are just a drop in the ocean.
It is.
But realizing that overhauling our systems requires everyone's specific expertise and that your joyful contribution is a structurally necessary piece of the puzzle is the ultimate antidote to that overwhelm.
You don't have to do everything, but you do have to do your thing. And we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building on a really striking statistic from the sources.
Let's hear it.
The text notes that 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity is currently in areas managed and protected by indigenous peoples. Think about what that actually proves.
It proves that human presence doesn't have to be inherently destructive to nature.
Exactly. We are capable of profound regenerative stewardship. So as you sit down to draw your own 3 circles today, ask yourself this. Instead of just asking how to minimize your negative footprint, what unique, joyous thing can you put in the center of your diagram that actually leaves a positive handprint on the world?